Kang Dae-ho stood at the window of Europa Station, watching Jupiter's great red spot swirl in the distance. Once he had commanded fleets that could crack planets. Now he tended to gardens and wrote poetry about the peace between stars. The change suited him well. 200 years had passed since humanity retreated from the galaxy. 2 centuries since the last human warship crossed the edge of the Sol system heading outward. The galaxy had grown quiet without them, or so the report said. New powers rose and fell like waves on distant shores, but none dared approach the sleeping giant at the center of known space. Park Ji-woo walked through the archives beneath Luna City, her footsteps echoing in halls that had not seen visitors in decades. Row after row of sealed data cores stretched into the darkness, each one containing the military secrets of a species that had once ruled the stars through sheer, terrifying competence. Her job was simple: keep the records safe, keep them sealed, and pray they would never be needed again. She paused before a particularly large vault door marked with symbols that made her skin crawl. Even the archivists were not allowed inside. Only 3 people in the entire Sol system had clearance for the deepest vaults, and none of them had used that clearance in living memory. The door had sensors that could detect her heartbeat, her breathing, even her intentions. Right now all lights showed green, peaceful, safe, but something had been bothering her lately. Small things. Automated systems running diagnostic checks they had not run in 50 years. Defense satellites adjusting their orbits without being asked. Communication arrays scanning frequencies they had ignored since the retreat began. Lee Hee-jin sat in her office on Earth, reading reports that grew more troubling each week. As head of the Terran Diplomatic Corps, she was one of the few humans who still paid attention to galactic affairs. Most of her people had turned inward, focusing on art, science, and the simple pleasure of existing without the weight of an empire on their shoulders. The reports painted a picture she did not like. The Drakmori Federation had been expanding for 30 years now, swallowing smaller systems like a hungry beast. The Vorthak Empire grew more aggressive with each passing season, their crystal ships appearing in neutral zones where they had no business being. Even the Nexari Collective, usually content to mine their own hive worlds, had been testing boundaries lately. All of them seemed to have forgotten why humanity had withdrawn in the first place. They remembered the human retreat, but not the human victories that came before it. They saw isolation and mistook it for weakness. Her communication console chimed with an incoming message. The sender was Drakmori, which was unusual. The Federation rarely contacted Earth directly, preferring to pretend humans did not exist. She opened the file and felt her blood turn cold. It was an ultimatum. The Drakmori Federation demanded that humanity comply with new galactic regulations regarding resource extraction, territorial boundaries, and military limitations. They gave Earth 30 standard days to respond. The message was polite but firm, like a parent scolding a stubborn child. They had no idea what they were doing. Hye-jin activated her emergency communication array, sending coded messages to Europa Station and Luna City. Within minutes, she had Dae-ho and Ji-woo on a secured channel. "Have you seen the Drakmori message?" she asked without preamble. Dae-ho nodded slowly. His peaceful expression had not changed, but something cold moved behind his eyes. "I saw it. They want us to acknowledge their authority over Sol system trade routes." "That's not all," Hye-jin continued. "I've been monitoring their fleet movements. They have ships moving toward the outer system. Not many, but enough to make their intentions clear." Ji-woo's voice crackled over the channel. "My archives are acting strange. Systems I've never seen active are running background processes. It's like they're preparing for something." The 3 humans sat in silence for a moment, each understanding what the others could not say aloud. For 2 centuries their species had slept. They had turned away from conquest, from the terrible burden of being the galaxy's apex predators. They had chosen peace over power, gardens over glory. But peace was a choice that required cooperation from all parties. "What do we know about current Drakmori capabilities?" Dae-ho asked, his voice taking on tones that Ji-woo and Hye-jin had not heard in decades. "Their fleet is impressive by current galactic standards," Hye-jin replied, consulting her files. 300 heavy cruisers, over 1,000 escort vessels, and enough firepower to level a small moon. They've conquered 12 systems in the past 5 years, and they think this makes them our equals, Dae-ho mused. Have they forgotten who taught their ancestors to build those ships? The truth was uncomfortable but undeniable. Every major galactic civilization had learned their technology from humanity, directly or indirectly. The Drakmori Federation's mighty warships were built using principles first developed in Terran shipyards. Their tactics were variations on strategies written by human generals. Even their weapons were based on designs humanity had discarded as too primitive for serious warfare. But they had forgotten this history, as children often forget the lessons of their parents. "What are our current capabilities?" Jiwoo asked, though she already knew the answer would be classified beyond her clearance level. Daeho smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. Adequate. The word carried weight that made both women shiver. They had grown up hearing stories of the old wars, when human fleets had moved like storms across the galaxy, bringing peace through overwhelming force. The Terran hegemony wars had lasted only 3 years, but they had reshaped the political map of known space. Entire civilizations had surrendered after seeing what human engineers could do when they put their minds to warfare. Those weapons, those ships, those terrible technologies, they had not been destroyed when humanity withdrew. They had been placed in storage, maintained by automated systems waiting for a day their creators hoped would never come. "We need to make a decision," Heejin said. "Do we respond to the Drakmori ultimatum diplomatically, or do we remind them why their great-grandparents knew better than to threaten humans?" Daeho turned back to his window, watching Jupiter's ancient storm rage in the vacuum of space. "Let's try diplomacy first. Send them a message explaining that humanity prefers isolation and has no interest in galactic politics. Be polite but firm, and if they don't listen..." The former admiral's reflection smiled in the window, and for a moment, the gardener philosopher vanished entirely. In his place stood something else, something the galaxy had not seen in 200 years. Then we remind them why we chose to sleep. Far below, in the archives of Luna City, sealed vault doors began running their first active security scans in 2 centuries. Ancient systems stretched and yawned, testing connections that had remained dormant for generations. The sleeping giants were stirring in their dreams. Kim Min-soo was reviewing the morning production reports when the first Drakmori ships appeared on the edge of asteroid station Hwaseong's sensor range. He set down his coffee and watched the tactical display with the calm patience of a man who had seen worse things than alien warships. The coffee was still warm when the aliens sent their first message. "Attention human facility," the translated voice crackled through the communication system. "This is Commander Thakmor of the Drakmori Federation 4th Fleet. You are operating in violation of established galactic regulations. Prepare for inspection and compliance enforcement." Min-soo looked around his office at the pictures on his desk, his wife and children back on Earth, the crew of his old destroyer from the war, a group photo from the day Hwaseong Station first came online. All reasons to keep things peaceful. All reasons to try diplomacy first. "Commander Thakmor, this is Administrator Kim Min-soo of Asteroid Station Hwaseong. We are operating in human space under Terran authority. We have no intention of interfering with Federation activities. Please state your specific concerns and we will address them through proper diplomatic channels." The response came quickly, too quickly to be anything but rehearsed. "Human space is no longer recognized as sovereign territory. All mining operations must comply with Federation environmental and safety standards. Prepare to receive boarding parties for immediate inspection." Min-soo closed his eyes and counted to 10. When he opened them, his expression had changed in a way that would have worried anyone who knew what to look for. He activated the station's internal communication system. "All personnel, this is Administrator Kim. We have visitors incoming who seem to have forgotten their manners. Please prepare to remind them that Hwaseong Station is our home, and we don't appreciate uninvited guests. Standard protocols are now in effect." Throughout the asteroid station, people who had been living quiet civilian lives began moving with purpose. Choi Sang-wook powered down his mining laser and reached for a toolbox that had not been opened in 20 years. The tools inside looked like mining equipment to any casual observer. But Sang-wook remembered when they had been standard issue for Terran Marine recon specialists. In the communications center, Yoon So-young began encrypting a message to Earth while simultaneously activating sensor jammers that would make the station's true defensive capabilities invisible to Drakmori scans. Her fingers moved across the controls with the muscle, memory of someone who had once coordinated orbital bombardments. The Drakmori approached with the confidence of predators who had never met anything more dangerous than themselves. Commander Thakmor commanded a force of 12 heavy cruisers and 30 escort vessels, enough firepower to reduce an undefended asteroid to dust. The human mining station registered on their sensors as exactly what it appeared to be, a small industrial facility with minimal defensive systems. They were not entirely wrong. Hwasong Station had minimal defensive systems by the standards Commander Thakmor understood. The comparison was like a child with a slingshot evaluating the defenses of a sleeping dragon. The first Drakmori boarding shuttle launched toward the station's main docking bay. Minsu watched its approach on his monitor and activated his personal communication device. Earth Control. This is Hwasong Station. We are about to receive unwelcome visitors, requesting guidance on rules of engagement. The response took longer than usual, nearly 4 minutes for a signal that should have reached Earth in 2. When it came, it was not from the usual traffic control center. The voice belonged to Admiral Kang Dae-ho, though he did not identify himself by name or rank. Hwasong Station, you are authorized to defend your home using any means necessary. Detailed rules of engagement are being transmitted on secure channels. Earth sends its regards. Minsu smiled as classified data began flowing into his station's computers. Information that had been locked away for 2 centuries suddenly became available to every human on Hwasong. Construction plans for their mining equipment revealed hidden capabilities. Personnel records showed that his civilian miners included former Special Forces operators, combat engineers, and ship commanders. Supply manifests listed materials that could be turned into weapons by anyone with proper knowledge. The Drakmori boarding shuttle docked with the station. 30 Federation Marines in full combat armor marched into the docking bay, expecting to find frightened civilians ready to surrender. Instead, they found Kim Min-soo waiting for them with a smile and a cup of coffee. "Welcome to Hwasong Station," he said pleasantly. "I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding. This is a human facility in human space, and you don't have permission to be here." Commander Thakmor's voice crackled through his Marines' communication systems. "Secure the facility. Arrest any who resist." The Marines raised their weapons, and Min-soo's smile faded. That was the wrong choice. What happened next would be analyzed by xenobiologists for decades. The human administrator did not fight the Drakmori Marines. He did not need to. The station itself fought them. Artificial gravity shifted, sending armored aliens tumbling into bulkheads. Atmospheric processors pumped sedative gases into the docking bay, while simultaneously providing clean air to human personnel through hidden vents. Emergency bulkheads sealed the boarding party into a small area where mining lasers, suddenly revealed to be military-grade weapons, could target them with precision. But the real shock came when other humans began to move through the station. They did not fight like civilians. They moved like apex predators, with coordination and efficiency that spoke of genetic memory stretching back through generations of warfare. Every human, from teenagers to grandparents, displayed combat awareness that made veteran Drakmori soldiers nervous. Choi Sang-wook used his mining equipment to disable the boarding shuttle's engines and weapon systems. What looked like routine maintenance work was actually precision sabotage performed by someone who understood alien engineering better than the aliens did. Other miners began modifying cargo haulers and ore processors into weapons that could threaten warships. Commander Thakmor watched from his flagship as his boarding party was systematically neutralized by what should have been helpless civilians. His ship's sensors detected energy readings that made no sense. The mining station was generating power outputs comparable to a military facility 10 times its size. "All vessels, target the station's main habitat sections," he ordered. "These humans need to learn respect." The words were barely out of his mouth when Hwasong Station's true defenses came online. Mining lasers revealed themselves as particle cannons. Ore refineries began launching projectiles that moved too fast for point defense systems to intercept. The asteroid itself split open, revealing weapon systems that had been disguised as geological features. But the most terrifying thing was not the hidden weapons. It was the way the humans used them. Every shot was precise, targeted to disable rather than destroy. They were not trying to win a battle. They were sending a message. Yoon So-young's transmission reached Earth as the first Drakmori ships began to retreat. "Earth Control, this is Hwasong Station. Hostile contact has been resolved. Station integrity is maintained. Casualties: None among human personnel, minimal among hostiles. They appear to be learning. The message included detailed tactical data, sensor records, and analysis of Drakmori capabilities. Within hours, every human facility in the Sol system had access to information that would let them deal with similar threats. But more importantly, Earth now knew that the galaxy had forgotten why humanity chose isolation in the first place. Admiral Kang Dai-ho stood before the Terran Council the next day, no longer wearing the simple clothes of a gardener. The uniform was old but well-maintained, with rank insignia that made younger council members remember stories they thought were myths. The Drakmori Federation has chosen to test our resolve, he said simply. They sent Marines to arrest our people and warships to threaten our homes. They seem to believe that 2 centuries of peace has made us weak. The council chamber was silent. These were people who had grown up in an age of peace, who knew war only from history books and memorial services. The idea of actually fighting seemed almost impossible. What do you recommend, Admiral? The council president asked. Dai-ho's smile was gentle, but his eyes held depths that had seen the rise and fall of empires. I recommend we show them what humanity becomes when our children are threatened. Not enough to destroy them, just enough to remind them why their ancestors knew better. The sleeping giants were beginning to stretch, and the galaxy was about to remember why some forces should never be awakened. Admiral Song Tae-min stood on the bridge of the dreadnought Eternal Vigil, watching 12 human ships prepare for their first combat deployment in 2 centuries. The Drakmori Federation had responded to the Hwasong incident by sending their 4th battle fleet, over 200 vessels carrying enough firepower to sterilize a world. They called it a police action, designed to restore order to the Sol system. The galaxy watched through news feeds and diplomatic channels, expecting to witness humanity's final defeat. What they saw instead would redefine their understanding of warfare itself. All ships report ready for combat operations, announced Captain Bae Soo-jin from her stealth frigate Silent Thunder. Her vessel was invisible to Drakmori sensors, but Tae-min could track its position through quantum entanglement communicators that shouldn't have existed, according to galactic science. Marine. Contingent ready for deployment, added Major O. Kyung-ho from the assault transport. Righteous fury. His troops were already sealed in boarding pods that looked like simple cargo containers to enemy scanners. Tae-min nodded and activated fleet communications. All vessels, this is Admiral Song. Our mission is simple. Rescue the civilians at Hwasong Station and remind the galaxy why humanity chose isolation. We are not here to conquer or destroy. We are here to educate. Comments Operation Gentle Lesson. The Drakmori fleet waited in formation around Hwasong Station, their ships arranged in a classic siege pattern that had worked against dozens of other species. Commander Thakmor had reinforced his original force with vessels from 3 other fleets, creating an armada that no known power could challenge. He was not entirely wrong. No known power could challenge such a force using conventional tactics. The human ships appeared on Drakmori sensors at the edge of weapon range, moving in a loose formation that suggested either desperation or incompetence. 12 vessels against 200 seemed like such obvious suicide that Commander Thakmor hesitated, wondering if this was some kind of trick. Human fleet. This is Commander Thakmor of the Drakmori Federation. You are outnumbered 20-1. Surrender now and your crews will be treated with dignity. Admiral Song's response was calm and measured. Commander Thakmor, this is Admiral Song Tae-min of the Terran Defense Force. You have threatened human civilians in human space. Withdraw now and no one needs to get hurt. The Drakmori commander laughed, a sound that translated poorly through the communication system. Admiral Song, your courage is admirable but pointless. Begin your attack whenever you're ready. My gunners need the practice. What happened next became the subject of tactical analysis for generations. The human ships did not charge heroically into battle. They did not attempt desperate ramming attacks or futile gestures of defiance. Instead, they simply disappeared, not from the battlefield. They remained visible on sensors. They disappeared from the Drakmori understanding of how space combat should work. The Eternal Vigil moved through the enemy formation like a ghost ship, its weapons firing with precision that seemed to violate the laws of physics. Each shot found its target despite the ship's impossible maneuvers, disabling Drakmori vessels without destroying them entirely. The massive dreadnought twisted and turned through space in ways that should have torn it apart. But its crew seemed unaffected by accelerations that would have killed normal humans. Captain Bei Su-jin's Silent Thunder appeared inside enemy formations without explanation, having somehow bypassed every known method of faster-than-light detection. Her frigate would materialize next to a Drakmori cruiser, disable its weapons and engines with surgical strikes, then vanish again before return fire could be targeted. But it was Major Oh Kyung-ho's Marines that truly terrified the Drakmori crews. The boarding actions did not follow any recognizable pattern. Human troops appeared on enemy ships without using airlocks or docking tubes. They moved through Drakmori vessels like they had been born there, navigating alien architecture with perfect familiarity. When enemy Marines tried to resist, they found themselves facing humans who fought with a combination of technological superiority and instinctive combat skills that made no evolutionary sense. How are they doing this? Commander Thakmor demanded from his flagship's bridge. His tactical officers had no answers. Human ships performed maneuvers that their sensors said were impossible. Human troops appeared in sealed areas without triggering security systems. Human weapons struck targets with accuracy that suggested the ability to see through solid matter. The truth was both simpler and more terrifying than the Drakmori could imagine. Humanity had spent 200 years perfecting the art of warfare without actually fighting wars. Every human child grew up playing games that were actually training simulations. Every human adult maintained skills through recreational activities that were indistinguishable from military exercises. Their entertainment industry produced movies and books that were tactical manuals disguised as fiction. Most importantly, human technology had not stagnated during their isolation. While the galaxy used weapons and ships based on principles humanity had developed centuries ago, humans had continued to innovate. The Eternal Vigil's impossible maneuvers came from gravity manipulation systems that treated space-time like a malleable material. The Silent Thunder's stealth capabilities used dimensional folding techniques that hid the ship in spaces that technically didn't exist. Major Oh's Marines carried weapons that could adjust their effects on a molecular level, making them equally effective against organic tissue, metal armor, or energy barriers. Their armor systems could adapt to any environment, from the vacuum of space to the crushing depths of a gas giant's atmosphere. But perhaps most importantly, every human in the fleet fought with the calm certainty of apex predators who had never encountered anything more dangerous than themselves. The battle, if it could be called that, lasted less than 3 hours. When it ended, over half the Drakmori fleet was disabled but intact, their crews mostly unharmed but thoroughly demoralized. The remainder had retreated to what they hoped was a safe distance, only to discover that human weapons had effective ranges measured in light hours rather than kilometers. Commander Thakmor found himself aboard the Eternal Vigil, having been rescued from his damaged flagship by troops who treated the extraction as a routine training exercise. Admiral Song received him in a conference room that looked more like a university lecture hall than a military briefing area. "Commander," Song said pleasantly, "I hope your crew is comfortable. Our medical teams are treating their injuries and our engineers are making emergency repairs to your ships." Thakmor stared at the human admiral, trying to process what he had experienced. "What are you people?" "We're gardeners and poets," Song replied. "Artists and philosophers. We grow flowers and write songs about the beauty of peaceful existence. We withdrew from galactic affairs because we were tired of being soldiers." "That's impossible. I saw what your ships can do. Your troops fight like machines designed for killing." Song's expression grew sad. "Yes, that's the problem with being human, Commander. We're very, very good at things we don't want to do." The Admiral gestured to a wall screen that showed Hwaseong Station, now surrounded by human ships instead of Drakmori vessels. "Your fleet came here to arrest miners and factory workers, people who chose to live simple lives far from the complications of galactic politics. You threatened to bombard their homes because they refused to acknowledge your authority. They resisted lawful inspection. They defended their families." Song's voice carried no anger, only infinite weariness. "Commander, your people have forgotten why humanity withdrew from galactic affairs. We didn't retreat because we were defeated. We retreated because we were tired of winning." The truth hit Thakmor like a physical blow. The human fleet had not just defeated his armada, they had done it while holding back. Every disabled ship could have been destroyed. Every captured crew member could have been killed. The humans had chosen mercy even in the midst of combat. "What happens now?" the Drakmori commander asked. "Now you go home," Song replied. "You tell your superiors that humanity prefers isolation, but will defend our people when threatened. You explain that our retreat was not weakness but wisdom, and you help us return to sleep. And if we don't?" Admiral Song smiled, and for a moment Thakmor saw something in the human's eyes that made him understand why ancient civilizations had once feared the species that now grew. "Flowers in orbital gardens then will have to stay awake. And Commander, when humans are fully awake, we tend to rearrange things to our liking." As the Drakmori fleet limped away from human space, carrying news of their defeat to the galaxy beyond, the people of Hwaseong Station sent a message to Earth. It was brief and to the point. "Thank you for the rescue, but we're staying. This is our home, and we're not finished redecorating." The temple door had creaked open, and the beings inside were beginning to remember why the galaxy had once feared their wakening. Fleet Admiral Lim Dongwu floated in the command center of Earth's orbital defense platform, watching display screens that showed 1,000 alien warships approaching the Sol system. The Drakmori Federation had allied with the Vorthak Empire and the Nixari Collective, creating the largest military force the galaxy had seen in centuries. They had studied the archived footage of humanity's previous conflicts, analyzed every available piece of data about human capabilities, and convinced themselves that superior numbers must inevitably prevail. They understood tactics, technology, and the mathematics of warfare. They did not understand what they were actually fighting. "Admiral," reported his aide, "Commander Park Soo-young, the alien fleet will reach the outer system in 18 hours. Intelligence suggests they plan to divide their forces and attack multiple human settlements simultaneously." Dongwu nodded, his expression calm despite the magnitude of the threat approaching Earth. Around him, holographic displays showed the positions of human ships throughout the solar system, a force of barely 200 vessels, against an enemy armada 5 times their size. "Dr. Han Mi-young is requesting permission to broadcast a message to the incoming fleet," Soo-young continued. "Granted. Patch her through to all channels, including their military frequencies." Dr. Han Mi-young appeared on screens throughout human space and on the bridge of every approaching alien vessel. She was middle-aged, wearing the simple clothes of a university professor, looking like exactly what she was, a xenobiologist who had spent her career studying alien cultures. "To the crews of the approaching fleet," she said, her voice carrying across light years through communication networks that shouldn't have been able to reach so far. "I am Dr. Han Mi-young of the Terran Institute for Xenobiological Studies. I have spent 40 years learning about your peoples, your cultures, and your histories. I know you believe you are fighting for the future of galactic civilization." She paused, looking directly into the camera with eyes that held deep sadness. "You are not wrong to fear us. You have remembered the stories your ancestors told about humanity's previous wars, but you have forgotten the most important part of those stories. We never wanted to fight them." On the bridge of the Vorthak command ship, Admiral Kethrill's crystalline form vibrated with frequencies that translated as contempt. "Human propaganda. Begin the attack as scheduled." But other commanders were less certain. The footage from the Hwaseong incident had spread throughout the galaxy, analyzed by military experts who reached increasingly disturbing conclusions. The humans had fought with capabilities that exceeded known technological limits. More troubling, they had demonstrated restraint that spoke of even greater hidden power. Dr. Han's broadcast continued. "We are a species that learned to make war across the stars, but we chose to make peace instead. We withdrew from galactic affairs not because we were weak, but because we were tired of being strong. 200 years ago, we went to sleep hoping the galaxy would grow up in our absence. The alien fleet maintained its approach vectors, but internal communications revealed growing uncertainty among their crews. Intelligence reports painted an impossible picture. Humans who treated interstellar warfare like recreational activities. Children who played games that were indistinguishable from advanced tactical training. Civilians who maintained skills that rivaled elite military units. "You have awakened us," Dr. Han said simply. "This is what we are when we are awake. Surrender now and we will go back to sleep." The response came from Admiral Kethrill, broadcast on all frequencies for his entire fleet to hear. "The age of human dominance is over. Today we reclaim the galaxy for its rightful inheritors. Dr. Han closed her eyes for a moment, then looked back at the camera with an expression of infinite regret. So be it. Admiral Lim, they have made their choice. What followed was not a battle in any conventional sense. It was a demonstration of what humanity could accomplish when forced to remember their true nature. Fleet Admiral Lim Dong-Wu did not command his forces like a military leader directing troops. He conducted them like a symphony orchestra, coordinating attacks across distances that should have made real-time communication impossible. Human ships appeared simultaneously in dozens of star systems, striking targets with precision that defied faster-than-light travel limitations. The Vorthak discovered that their crystalline hulls, believed impenetrable by galactic military standards, dissolved like sugar in water when exposed to human particle weapons. The Nexari found their hive-mind coordination scrambled by electronic warfare systems that attacked thoughts rather than computers. The Drakmori watched their heaviest armor become as fragile as paper when human weapons adjusted their effects at the quantum level. But it was not the technology that broke the alien alliance. It was the humans themselves. Colonel Zhang Wujin led special operations missions that struck deep into enemy territory, not to sabotage equipment or assassinate leaders, but to gather intelligence. His teams moved through alien space like ghosts, appearing on enemy worlds to study their cultures, their fears, their deepest psychological vulnerabilities. What they found was terrifying in its implications. The alien alliance was not fighting to conquer humanity. They were fighting for species survival. Intercepted communications revealed the truth. Their ancient archives contained records of humanity's previous galactic dominance, stories that had been dismissed as myths until the events at Hwaseong Station. They remember, Colonel Zhang reported to Admiral Lim during a secure briefing, not the current generation but their genetic memory. Their ancestors knew what humanity was capable of when fully awakened. The alliance formed because they believed this is their last chance to prevent human resurgence. Admiral Lim studied the intelligence reports, his expression growing more troubled with each page. They're not invading us. They're trying to put us back to sleep permanently. Yes, sir. And they're willing to commit genocide to do it. The revelation changed the nature of the conflict. Humanity was not facing conquest but extinction. The alien alliance had brought sufficient firepower to sterilize every human world. Believing that complete destruction was their only hope for safety, they were not entirely wrong. Human forces responded to this existential threat by abandoning all pretense of restraint. Admiral Lim's ships began to fight not as a defense force but as the military arm of a species that had once ruled the galaxy through absolute dominance. Vorthak fleets watched in horror as human vessels performed maneuvers that violated their understanding of physics. Ships folded space around themselves, appearing inside enemy formations without crossing the distance between. Human weapons struck targets in the past, causing damage before the shots were fired. Nexari hive minds found themselves infiltrated by human consciousness, their collective thoughts overwhelmed by individual human minds that operated on principles they could not comprehend. Their most secure installations became transparent to human intelligence, networks that seemed to know their plans before they made them. Drakmori battle groups discovered that their tactical databases had been compromised for centuries, their military doctrines rewritten by human agents who had been planning for this conflict since before the current generation was born. The war lasted 3 months and reshaped the political structure of the galaxy. When it ended, the alien alliance had not been destroyed. It had been rendered irrelevant. Their fleets remained mostly intact. Their worlds were unharmed, but their capacity for organized resistance had been surgically removed. Dr. Han Mi-young broadcast a final message to the galaxy, speaking from the same simple office where she had made her initial plea for peace. "The war is over," she said, her voice carrying to every inhabited world in known space. "Humanity has demonstrated once again that we are capable of things we prefer not to do. Your fleets are intact, your worlds are safe, but your ability to threaten our children has been permanently removed." She paused, looking older than she had months earlier. "We are going back to sleep now. We hope that when we wake again, it will be to find a galaxy that has finally learned to live in peace." The alien fleets began their long journey home, carrying with them the knowledge that their ancestors' warnings had been understated rather than exaggerated. Humanity was not just a powerful species that had chosen isolation. They were the galaxy's apex predators, temporarily dormant but never truly asleep. And somewhere in the depths of space, Colonel Zhang's intelligence teams continued their work, ensuring that the next time someone tried to kick the temple door, humanity would be ready to respond before the threat fully materialized. The war gods were dancing now, and their steps shook the foundations of galactic civilization. Ambassador Seo Yun-hee stood before beings that had watched the rise and fall of civilizations long before humans first looked at the stars. The ancient keepers had emerged from hidden worlds throughout the galaxy, bringing with them archives that stretched back to the dawn of spacefaring civilization. The meeting took place on a neutral station orbiting an ancient star that had been burning since before Earth formed. Representatives from every major galactic power sat in a vast amphitheater, their faces reflecting the shock of recent revelations. The war was over, but the truth it had uncovered threatened to reshape their understanding of galactic history itself. "We have remained hidden for millennia," spoke Elder Neth Karan, his species so old that their name for themselves translated simply as the first. His form was ethereal, barely maintaining coherence in the physical realm. "We watched your species develop, wondering if you would remember your true nature when awakened." General Na Hyun-soo sat at Yun-hee's right side, still wearing the uniform of a warrior, but carrying himself like someone who had grown tired of violence. His campaigns had ended not in conquest, but in the systematic dismantling of the galaxy's capacity for large-scale warfare. Enemy fleets remained intact but somehow incapable of coordinating attacks. Military installations functioned perfectly except when aimed at human targets. "What do you mean, our true nature?" Yun-hee asked, though part of her already suspected the answer. Historian Kim Jong-sik activated holographic displays that filled the amphitheater with images spanning cosmic time. Star charts showed the expansion of civilization across the galaxy, but the patterns revealed something that current galactic powers had never recognized. Every major civilization in this galaxy bears the fingerprints of human intervention, he explained, his voice carrying to beings whose ancestors had witnessed the events he described. The Vorthak Empire's crystalline technology, the Nexari Collective's hive mind architecture, the Drakmori Federation's military doctrine, all of them evolved from principles first developed by humans. The assembled representatives stirred uneasily. These were species that prided themselves on their ancient heritage and independent development. The suggestion that their greatest achievements were based on human guidance challenged their fundamental understanding of their own history. "That's impossible," protested Admiral Kethril, his crystalline form resonating with frequencies that expressed disbelief. "The Vorthak Empire has existed for 50,000 years. Humans have only been spacefaring for a few millennia." Elder Nethkaran's response came not in words but in the activation of archive systems that had been dormant since before any current civilization reached the stars. Holographic records filled the space above their heads, showing events that no living being remembered. The images told a story that rewrote galactic history. Humans had not emerged recently from a primitive world called Earth. They had been traveling between stars for hundreds of thousands of years, guiding the development of younger species with the patience of gardeners, tending a vast cosmic orchard. Every major breakthrough in galactic civilization, faster than light travel, artificial intelligence, energy manipulation, biological engineering, had been subtly guided by human advisors who worked from the shadows. "We were your teachers," Yun-hee said, her voice filled with wonder as she processed the implications of the ancient records. "Your guides, your parents in a cosmic sense. But why did we forget?" asked General Na, studying tactical analyses that showed human involvement in conflicts stretching back to the dawn of recorded history. "Why did we choose to withdraw?" Kim Jong-sik highlighted a series of records from approximately 50,000 years ago, showing a period of galactic upheaval that had nearly destroyed civilization itself. "The Great Burnout," he read from the ancient files, a time when human guidance had created dependencies that prevented younger species from truly maturing. Entire civilizations collapsed when humans stepped back even slightly. The records showed the aftermath. Species that could not function without human oversight. Wars that erupted when guidance was withdrawn. Civilizations that had become so dependent on human wisdom that they lost the ability to make independent decisions. So we chose exile, Elder Nethkaran explained. Humanity withdrew from galactic affairs completely, allowing younger species to develop their own strength. You went into stasis, sleeping until the galaxy could prove it no longer needed your constant guidance. The great exhaustion, General Na realized. What we thought was a retreat from military defeat was actually a planned withdrawal to allow our children to grow up. Ambassador Seo looked around the amphitheater at representatives of civilizations that had considered themselves humanity's equals or superiors. The truth was more complex than simple dominance. Humans were not conquerors or even rulers in the traditional sense. They were caretakers of a cosmic garden, shepherds who had temporarily stepped away to let their flock learn independence. The Sol system isn't just humanity's home, she said, understanding dawning in her voice. It's a temple, a place where the galaxy's guardians went to sleep, waiting for a time when they would no longer be needed. But someone kicked the temple door, Kim Jong-sik added grimly. The Drakmori attack on Hwaseong Station wasn't just an aggressive act by an ambitious species. It was a cosmic alarm clock, forcing humanity to wake up and assess whether the galaxy had finally learned to take care of itself. The assembled representatives sat in stunned silence as the implications settled over them. Their recent conflict with humanity had not been a war between equals. It had been a test administered by cosmic parents to determine whether their children were ready for true independence. What happens now? Asked a Nexari delegate, her hive-mind consciousness struggling to process concepts that challenged every assumption about galactic civilization. General Na Hyan-Su stood, his expression carrying the weight of decisions that would affect billions of worlds. Now you choose. We can return to sleep, trusting that you have learned enough to guide yourselves, or we can remain awake, accepting the responsibility of active guardianship once again. And if we're not ready for independence? Admiral Kethril asked, his crystalline form resonating with fear. Ambassador Seo's smile was gentle but carried depths that spoke of cosmic patience measured in geological time. Then we help you grow until you are. But understand, active human guidance means active human oversight. We would not be conquering the galaxy. We would be managing it, like gardeners tending to plants that are not yet strong enough to survive without care. The choice offered to the galaxy was both simple and profound. Prove your maturity by living in peace, or accept the return of your cosmic parents with all the loss of independence that implied. Elder Nethkaran activated one final archive, showing the current state of galactic civilization compared to projections made 50,000 years earlier. You have exceeded our most optimistic expectations, he announced. The war with humanity was your final examination and you passed. Not because you won, you could never have won, but because when faced with extinction, you chose to fight for your species' survival rather than surrendering to despair. Admiral Kang Dae-ho appeared via holographic projection from Europa Station, wearing the simple clothes of a gardener but speaking with the authority of someone who had helped shape galactic civilization across cosmic ages. The test is over, he announced to the assembled representatives. Humanity chooses sleep. We will return to our gardens and our poetry, secure in the knowledge that our children have finally learned to take care of themselves. He paused, and his gentle expression took on depths that spoke of power beyond imagination. But the temple door remains open, not as a threat but as a reminder. We are always here if you truly need us, and if you ever again mistake our choice of peace for weakness. The projection faded, leaving the amphitheater in silence that stretched across light years. Years later, the galaxy settled into a new equilibrium. Trade routes reopened, diplomatic relations normalized, and the great powers found themselves cooperating in ways that would have seemed impossible before the war. Not because they had been conquered, but because they had finally understood their place in a cosmic community that was older and more complex than any of them had imagined. Humanity maintained a small presence in galactic affairs, observers, and advisors who offered guidance when asked, but never demanded obedience. Their ships patrolled the void not as conquerors but as the ultimate peacekeepers, beings so overwhelmingly powerful that their mere existence prevented the kind of large-scale conflicts that had once threatened to tear civilization apart. The temple door stood open, and sometimes, if you listened carefully, you could hear the sleeping war gods dreaming of a galaxy finally at peace with itself. And in the depths of space, on worlds that officially did not exist, human watchers maintained their eternal vigil, ready to wake their sleeping kin if the galaxy ever again forgot the lessons written in the stars themselves.